In a cell phone,
Hi, friends, and
you
welcome
have
back
a
to
connection
HealthSimple Radio.
to
This is
a cell
episode
tower.
number 42,
You have a
and I
connection to your
hope you
Wi-Fi.
are ready
You have a
to
connection to
be
your
mind
Bluetooth.
blown.
And
Today we
then,
are
so you
joined
have all these
by
emissions coming
Daniel
out of those little
DeBaun.
devices.
He's the author
They're
of a book,
low-level
Radiation
emissions,
Nation. I
but
just
they're
finished reading it
microwave
myself
emissions. They're radio
and
frequency
couldn't believe the
emissions.
What do I
information that I
mean by
just
that?
learned and thought I
Here's
had
an
to
example.
get him on
When you use
this
a microwave
podcast
oven
to share this
and you put a
information
piece
with
of meat
all
inside
of
a
you.
microwave oven.
If you've never heard of
friends,
EMF
welcome to the
or you're not
HealthSimple
quite
From
sure
the
what it
microwave
is, then
hits
stay
the
tuned
between the
because
cells.
we are going to dive
And
into
they
it
oscillate
all.
themselves.
And we live
And that's
in a
how
very
we cook
connected
food.
world. It's getting
Is
more and more
oscillating
connected
cells.
Don't forget to
by
subscribe
the
to our
day.
channel.
That's
You know, we
a
have
If
cell
you have any
phones,
questions about anything we
tablets,
talked about in this
laptops.
episode,
They all use
just
Wi-Fi
comment
and
below, and
Bluetooth
I'll
and
get back to you as soon
who
as
knows
possible.
what else.
Your cell phone works
But
at
do we
about
really
2
understand
gigahertz.
what this
So
technology
what you're using
does
to connect
to
your
our
cell
health?
tower
Is there an
is a
impact?
microwave signal.
Well, the
That is known to
research
be a thermal
is starting to
and
suggest
a biological
that there
impacting
is.
source.
You see, all these devices emit
All right,
radiation.
hello everybody, and
Now,
welcome
not the same
back
amount
to
as
HealthSimple
an
Radio. This is
MRI would,
episode
but a
number
low-level
42,
radiation.
and we have Dan
However, what
DeBaun
we're
here with
finding
us,
in the
who is the
research is
founder
that
of
through
DefenderShield.
chronic
So Dan, welcome to
exposure
the show,
to this,
first of all.
there can be some
Well,
detrimental
thank you very much
effects
for
to the human
inviting me,
body.
Kyle. Appreciate
Now,
it.
think about how often
Now, can
you're
you give us a little bit
exposed
of
to your cell phone,
a background
and your laptops,
of
and
who
your
you are,
tablets,
and
Wi-Fi,
just so the listeners know, we're going
and
to talk about
who knows
EMF.
what other electronic devices
If you
we
haven't
use
heard of
on a
it, don't
daily
worry, you're going to learn
basis.
all about it here in this episode.
As I said, this
very
episode
interesting topic.
is
So
going to
Dan,
be
give us a
absolutely
little bit of
mind-blowing.
background of
Don't
where
take
you
it as
come from.
fear-monger. Just
Um,
become informed. We're going to give you
well,
guys a
let's
lot of
first start
practical
by
tips at the end on
saying,
how you can
that,
sort of manage your exposure
a year or
to
two ago,
EMF
I was
and limit the impact that it
co-author
may
on
have
Radiation Nation.
on
It's a
your
book,
health. Now, before we get
that
into the
talks
episode,
about
if
modern
you're really interested in
technologies
improving your
and
health
the
and
emissions that are
optimizing the way
from
that
those
you feel and
technologies,
want to learn about more things
it's
just
the
like
fallout of
EMF,
modern,
then I'd highly
technology, if you
recommend
like to put it.
subscribing to the HealthSimple
But,
email list.
what prompted
This
that
is
was,
an email list that I
several years
personally
ago,
email every week,
I ran
once a
technical
week, every
laboratories for the
Tuesday,
Bell system.
and I basically just
And,
give you guys my thoughts
then
on different
quite
health topics,
serendipitously got
on
involved
different
in
products
this
that
kind
I
of
use or
technology
have
space
tried,
because
and really anything
my
else that
wife
I
wanted
think you may be
grandchildren.
interested in. It's one email
My
a week,
sons were using their
and
laptops
we'll just
on
give
their
you some
laps
good
for
insight into different
hours at a
topics
time.
every single week.
And my wife
So
says,
if you
"That
want to
can't
check
be
that
good for
out,
you." And
just
I,
go to
of course, I have background in
healthsimpleinfo.com,
technology, so
our
I said
website,
to
and it'll pop up.
my
Just
wife,
throw
I
your
think
name
that's
and your
just
email in
not
there,
true.
and you will
The energy
receive
levels
an
too
email
low
from
to
me
be bothersome
every
to the
single
body.
week. Without
But I
further
did look into
ado,
it a little bit. And
All
what
right,
I
hello
found
everybody, and
was,
welcome
to my
back to
surprise, there
HealthSimple
was
Radio.
very
This is
serious
episode
and
number
clear evidence,
42, and we
even
have
back
Dan
then,
DeBaun here
that
with
there
us,
was
who is the
potential
founder
dangers
of
to the emissions that are around us all
DefenderShield.
day.
So Dan, welcome to the
So
show.
that prompted me to
thank you very
start
much
a
for inviting me,
company
Kyle. Appreciate
that
it.
actually provides
Of course.
shielding.
Now,
And
can you
what
give us a
happened
little
was
bit
I
of
built it for my
a
sons,
background
and they
of who
actually
you
began
are,
using it.
and just so the listeners know, we're going
And
to talk about
then they give it to
EMF.
their friends, and
If you
and
haven't
so on
heard
and
of
so
it,
forth. And
don't
all of a
worry,
sudden,
you're
we're
going to learn
running a
all about it
company,
here in this episode.
that
Very
provides
interesting
shielding,
topic. So Dan,
to
give us a little bit
those
of
who
background
use
of where
devices
you
near
come from.
their body. And oh, by the way, I still don't have grandchildren. Let's first 5 start years by later, so- saying that a year or
I'm
two
sure
ago,
that
I was
the wife isn't too
co-author
happy about
on
that.
Radiation Nation.
Right, exactly.
Well,
Yeah, we have to have
that
dogs to keep
talks
us
about modern
happy.
technologies
My
and
parents
the
are doing the same
emissions
thing.
that are from those technologies.
You know, it's funny.
It's
You
the fallout of
you basically
modern,
started a company by
technology, as
accident.
we like to
Yeah.
call it.
But I mean, it's
But,
solving
what
a
prompted
big
that
problem that's
was,
happening today. That I think a
several
lot of
years ago,
people have no idea
I
even
ran
exists.
technical
Yet it
laboratories for the
so
Bell
many, and
system.
I know myself. I've used my
And,
laptop on my lap for
then
hours and
quite
ends
serendipitously got
since
involved
college,
in
really. And
this
so
kind of technology space because
when I came across
my wife
your
wanted
work,
grandchildren.
you know, it really
My
kinda spiked
sons were
something in
using
me
their
that, hey, I got to
laptops on
change
their
'cause
laps
this
for
is not good.
hours at
So
a time.
can you
And my wife
explain a little
says,
bit
"That
about
can't be
what
good for you."
EMF
And I,
actually is? Because it
of
can be
course,
a little
had
bit of a
background in
confusing topic for
technology, so I
people,
said
but
to
I think hopefully we can
my
simplify it
wife
a bit
that
here and
that's-
make sure that
this is
people
not
really
true. The energy levels
understand,
are too
you know,
low
what's
for
going
it
on
to
here.
be bothersome to the
Okay,
body. But I did
I'll tell a little
look
bit
into
of
it
the
a little
story.
bit, and what I found was
35
years
surprise,
ago, there was very
30 years
serious
ago, I was
and clear
in the
evidence,
labs.
even back
And
then, that
we
there
had
was potential dangers to the emissions that are around us all day. So that prompted me to start a company
a whole
that
lot
actually
of things
provides
into
shielding.
the environment.
And what happened was I built it for my sons, and they
I
actually
was
began
safe
using
because
it.
I was
and then they give it to their friends and so on and so forth. All of a sudden, we're running a mainframe. And so I was not provide shielding emitted into those who use emissions that were occurring from electronics. And oh, by the way, I still don't have grandchildren 5 years later. Fast forward, maybe for the last 10 years or so,
I'm sure
we've had
the wife
these
isn't too happy
small
about that.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, we have to have dogs on our ears happy. And
my parents are doing the same thing.
It's funny how the power,
you know, it's funny. You basically started a company by accident
30 years ago.
But I mean, it's solving a big problem that's happening today. That I think a lot of people have no idea it even exists, yet it affects so many. And I know myself, I've used my laptop on my lap for hours on end
that are around us that
since
are
college, really. And so when I came across your work, you know, it really kind of spiked something in me that, hey, I got to change because this is not good. So can you explain a little bit about what EMF actually is? Because it can be a little bit of a confusing topic for people, but I think hopefully we can simplify it a bit here and make sure that people really understand what's going on here.
Up to 300 kilohertz. I'll tell a little bit of a story. And 35 years ago, because 30 years ago, when you're a little bit of a distance away from those kinds of things, it's pretty we had these huge mainframes that were just coming about. You have the laptop emitting a whole lot of things in a cell phone. But you have a connection to I was safe because you have a connection away from your Wi-Fi, the equipment. You have a connection to your Bluetooth coupling connecting to the main. So you have all these emissions coming out of those little devices in their low-level emissions. The emissions that were occurring from electronics emissions, they're radio that wasn't near my body. Fast forward, what do I mean? Last 10 years or so. Here's an example. We've had when you use a microwave small little device, put a piece of meat inside a microwave oven on our laps, and you turn it on. And the signal from the microwave, it's funny how the power, the strength of the computers and they oscillate mainframes 20 and 30 years ago are now in my hand is oscillating and there are also emissions coming out of them that are no microwave far distance that touching my body. And so what are those 2.3 gigahertz of technologies your cell phone that are around us that are generating emissions? So what you're using to connect to your cell tower is a microwave plug into a wall. That is known to be a thermal and a biological impact source. A toaster, even though it's at a low level, emit, if you think about frequency emissions, when you walk into an environment the power now being consumed, there's these low-level emission sources up to 300 kilohertz. The cell towers that actually have enabled Wi-Fi. You have your own Wi-Fi. Most of the time they're okay because when you're a little bit of a distance away from tablet and cell phone right next to you, all of them having many forms of emission. So all of a sudden you're getting an environment, a whole lot of stuff that 10 years ago didn't exist. And a cell phone.
So this EMF,
you have a connection
coming
to
off
a
of these
cell
devices. Is it
you have a connection
coming off
to
and
your
it's
Wi-Fi.
taking over the entire room? Is it just close to the device? How does that work?
So you have all these emissions coming out of when you think of this. Think of level emissions. But then there's a tiny little radio that's beginning to emerge out. What do I mean by that? Gets built. Here's an example. Bigger and bigger. When you use a microwave oven on a cell phone, it can go up to 5 miles. And it's an omnidirectional. And you turn it on. It's going in all directions, and it's emanating from your microwave cell phone. Any of those water between the cells of your body emanate into the entire room. So when you have a cell phone and you have Bluetooth Wi-Fi oscillating cells from an energy, you have three that's a microwave sources that are omnidirectional that are going in all directions into your environment. About 2.3 gigahertz.
Wow. This is happening not just from our cell phones. This is happening from our Wi-Fi router that's around. This is happening from all these devices that are plugged in.
Yeah, that is known to be a thermal and a biological impact. That's constantly emitting, even though it's because it has a little motor. If you think about it, your refrigerator. When you walk into an environment today in our room,
I'm currently wearing Bluetooth headphones. I assume that's going to be
Bluetooth headphones. The cell towers near you. You have I'm going to delve into that comment. You have a little bit prematurely, but I want tablet and cell phone right next to you was a good point. Having many forms of emission. A cell phone so all of a sudden you're getting in your environment a whole lot of stuff. The energy 10 years ago didn't exist to go 5 miles.
So this EMF that's coming off of these devices? Is it just coming off and it's taking over the entire room? Is it just close to the device? How does that work?
Protecting your good question, your brain cells. When you think of this, think of your finger 15 times less. There's a tiny little can actually beginning to emerge out of your brain. It's built because it's bigger and bigger and bigger. So cell phone, it can go up to 5 less than and it's an omnidirectional signal. It's going in all directions and it's emanating from your cell phone. Any of those sources emanate, even though it's really small. So when you have a cell phone and you have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and because we know from science, you have 3 that even the lowest emitting sources, omnidirectional, that are going in all directions into your environment, can be an exposure.
Wow.
That may
this
have
is happening
effects
not just from our cell phones. This is happening from our Wi-Fi router that's around. This is happening
and you're
from
listening
all these
to music
devices that are plugged in.
That's not necessarily
and
good.
So,
particularly plugged into a wall, that's constantly emitting
$200
because it has a little motor inside your refrigerator that you have.
Okay, we'll talk more about the specific devices and which ones are headphones. I assume that's kind of near the end. We'll get more practical. I want to talk about, I want to apply this and go, what does this actually mean for us? So how does this EMF actually affect our bodies down at the cellular level? What's it doing to us?
It was a good point. There's many things. 1.6 watts per kilogram of over the last the energy level is strong enough to go 5 miles. There's been a lot of at that frequency that talks about the impact to the cell. Like for example, concussed individual. We were talking about no blood-brain barrier. My wife and grandchildren. Protecting your brain after cells. About 4 hours. One laptop in your lap, 15 times 25% of your can actually influence the cell. So your brain, and there's because it's a long-term potential damage. So if those excessive 15 times less than 1.6 watts per kilogram. Transient things. That when you use Bluetooth, you may get a headache. It's a neurological impact watts per kilogram. You may have even though it is really small, you may have a potential health in your thinking. Because very we know from science that even the lowest levels kinds of temporary over a long period of time impact when you're really associated close to those devices that may have damage. But then there's the more long term. To answer your question, you put a Bluetooth into your ears itself, and you're listening to music for 6 hours. That's not necessarily a good thing to do. Can actually mutate and be a modified cell. Bluetooth. We know that we actually know the breakdown.
Okay, we'll talk more about the specific devices and which ones are that. Kind of near the end, we'll get more practical. I want to talk about, I want to apply this and go, what does this actually mean for us? So how does this EMF actually affect our body? Is it down to the cellular level? What's it doing to us?
They had an epidemiology study in which there's many things it does. And they looked for failures over the last 5 years or so from those exposures. There's been a lot of research. And what they found was that there was talks about elevated the impact to the cell. A significant, for example, find we were talking about scientific term. My wife, one and grandchildren. It's really real. And what they found was about 4 hours there was increase in front of a laptop in your lap, and there was increase 25% of your so we know is from that research. So plus worldwide research, Lanzani potentially out of Italy. If those they did the same, almost identical. So there's those with the almost identical same results. You may get a headache. So what we know, a neurological impact. With you may have lots of study dizziness, and lots of replicated. You may have fogginess in your thinking. There can be very slight, and it can be serious. So there's those kinds of temporary, those kinds of things impacts when you really get associated close to those devices are known as. But then there's the cell impact. More long term, as I was mentioning before. We know also itself. There's like 4,500 on RF system functions can actually mutate and believe it or not, be a modified those cell. Systems are weakened, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We actually know the breakdown of the cell, but if they're weakened, exposure. And they actually can be impacted. For example, I know you sit down studies and you go to bed in the U.S. You put your one large head on national pillow and you have a cell phone right next to you that spent $25 million. Well, guess what? And they had a 20% or so of people they compared actually can't go to sleep, and they looked because it's screwing around with the process of creating the melatonin from those exposures. That's one of the reasons why they found was that there was an elevated for long duration, a significantly significant are finding. In other words, that's a scientific term. It can be temporary. It's really real. More seriously, and so there's what they found was a large variety of increase in frontal lobe cancers. And there was there's
still a bit of controversy about the research on this, and I mean it's understandable. One, it's new, it's something that we're just kind of learning about.
They did the same,
and two, it's not an easy thing to study. I would assume
almost identical same results.
Can you
what we know, and typically it takes over 30 years when lots of stuff is introduced in our environment, and then we replicated findings. For example, that in 1978, I think the cells, and it can be the chairman of Philip Morris was in front of those kinds of things, pediatricians, physicians, and they are known as is it a problem if a pregnant woman we know also smokes cigarettes? There's like 4,500 absolutely not system functions in the body. And then he thought about it a little bit, and he said, "Oh, wait a minute! Believe it or not, the baby's going to be born systems are weakened, and we'll talk a little bit about why they're weakened. Baby. But if they're 1978." That was the mentality that, of course, we all know. For example, I know you sit down of other things, and you go to bed a long time for us to learn on the trans fats, and you have a cell phone right next to food space. I bet you do. Trans fats. So we had 30 years, 20% or so of people. A lowly actually can't go to sleep. Biochemist, because it's not the process of creating the melatonin. It's the trans fats. That's one of the reasons why we're using to cook the food. The trans fats that we're putting into our system, margarine, so it spreads easier. And sure enough, it took over 30 years. It can be temporary, and ultimately be banned. So there's in the U.S. a large variety of that. What you're seeing with electromagnetic radiation,
there's still a bit of controversy about the research on this, and I mean it's understandable. One, it's new.
By the way, when I smoked at 12 years old, quite a number of years ago, I often
it's not an easy thing to study, I would assume.
The general public never knew anything about it. And typically it takes over 30 years cigarette smoking and stuff is introduced in our environment. Research knew it, and then we understand it. It just wasn't generally available. In 1978, I think it was. We knew it. So chairman is that true today? Was in front of a physician group. We have research physician group, very large, and significant research that's pointing the finger. Is it a problems that we have in our environment? If a pregnant woman we're creating smokes cigarettes, and so I believe that it's controversial. And it often depends on which side of the fence you're on. Wait a minute, though. But it's not the baby's going to be born small to have. If you and what woman wouldn't want a smaller baby?
Well, and I agree, and it seems like EMF is kind of the new smoking, right? It took, as you just said, with trans fats and everything else, it took a while for us to realize that, hey, smoking is bad. And part of the reason for that was because the companies that sell you cigarettes were lobbying against it. We're trying to hide the research. Is this thing happening with devices
that are killing us? It's the trans fats. Absolutely. I'm going to tell you two stories. The trans fats that we're putting into our margarine so it spreads easier. And sure enough, it took over 30 years for it to ultimately be banned. One of them in the U.S. is, I believe that what you're seeing with electromagnetic radiation is that the same model. It's consistent. It takes a long time in the U.S. It's not in the world. By the way, when I smoked at 12 years old, quite a number of years ago, and he said, I love your products. I wanted to be a big man, but I can never use them. The general public never knew anything about substantiate the connections to potentially cigarette smoking and cancer. So, but research knew it at that time. It just wasn't generally available, market understood. Here's another more sinister. We knew it. So is that true today in the U.S. with electromagnetic radiation? Yes. We have research, FCC, very large, significant governing bodies that's pointing the finger to standards and problems that we have in our environment that all of us have that we're creating. And so that I believe that it's controversial. His name. it often depends on which side of the fence you're on, but it's not an unusual debate to have a consortium responsible for representing.
Well, and I agree,
the
and it seems like EMF is kind of the new smoking, right? It took, as you just said, with trans fats and everything else, you know, it took a while for us to realize that, hey, smoking is bad. And part of the reason for that was because the companies that sell you cigarettes were lobbying against it. We're trying to hide the research. Is this sort of thing happening with devices? So do we have standards? Are they any good for the devices that we have?
I'm going to tell you two stories.
Are we kind of
the first story is, I was in the telecommunications 30 years ago, as I talked about the FCC. So I knew a lot of people. And they got one data is about the average 6-foot head of the largest wireless and they said, cell phone, one of the we want to know in the world in the U.S. strong the signal level needs to be on a cell phone. He saw, and so we're going to take that 6-foot male average. I love your products, and we're going to establish I can never use them. Because if I begin using that, I'm going to substantiate what they did, the fact that they could potentially be dangerous. They said 1.6 watts per kilogram will penetrate a male's head by 1 inch, and here's another more sinister by 2 degrees. There was in the U.S. Remember we talked about it? It's a microwave. It heats up the cell. FCC. That's what it does. So that's what the standard was. Establishes standards back over 30 years ago. That all of us have to abide in telecommunications. Fast forward to today, that man, you have a child, Wheeler is his name, that's 6 years old, 30 using a cell phone, was the chairman and head. That same 1.6 watt consortium is not going an inch into the head. For representing the going all the way through the cell phone service providers. And fast forward, all they worried about 6 years ago was the thermal. He became the how much heat was being of the FCC, never establishing the standards for the end, of course. Almost like putting it more concerning about the biological impacts, but literally not the thermal. Politics is the biological is where you have mutated cells, DNA damage.
So, do we have standards? Are they any good for the devices that we have, or 4,500
are we kind of processes of the body? I keep on going about 30 years, and 30 years ago, biological and the FCC never went, and they got.
So it's not about the heat that these devices are causing. Because I mean, you put your laptop on your lap for a while, it gets really hot.
We want to know.
That's not. I mean, that's part of it, but that's a whole different scenario.
Level needs to be on a cell phone.
Different thing that's actually causing a lot of the issues.
And we're going to establish a standard.
So it's affecting.
By the way, when you said it, you feel it in your lap, the heat in the lab. They said one can be 6 watts per kilogram. It's the emission will penetrate a male's head by being 1 inch off you with the fan, and it will heat it up by 2 degrees. The laptop. Remember we talked about it. It's a microwave increased based on the transmission, the cells of the RF signal. So that's what the standard was. It's because it's a thermal emitting signal. It's increasing the temperature of that. Fast forward. And by the way, those are the most. You have a child most susceptible. That's 6 years old using a cell phone. The heart. What's going on? And that same 1.6 watts per kilogram is not going an inch into the head. When you have going all the way through the head of a child, and they say, God, and all they worried about, it's heating up, was the thermal impact. That's heat was being created. Canaries in the coal mine, never the biological. If it's heating up, it's not. And of course,
and if you think about where we put our devices, most is the groin. The pocket, the heart there, if you got a suit jacket on, or you're going to be on the phone up to here, so the worst spots. Now, is
the impact to the 4,500?
Is it affecting children much more than it would be an adult then? Is that what you were suggesting earlier?
Standard actually never reflected that. It's not just only
it's not about the heat that these devices are causing. I mean, you put your laptop on your lap for a while, it gets really hot.
In and of itself.
But that's not. I mean, that's part of it, but that's a whole different scenario.
Absolutely. The bones
different thing that's actually causing a lot of the issues.
They're not resistant to penetration.
Okay, that's interesting.
A child is 3 times.
It's affecting.
By the way, when you said you feel it in your lap, the heat in the lap. So it's like can be two things. Exposures. It's the emission the kids of playing little games that's being thrown off you with their connection to the Wi-Fi, and they're being exposed to these signals. Or it can be they're absorbing based on the transmission of the RF signal to the Wi-Fi.
Not at all.
It's because it's a thermal emitting signal. It's
so is there? I mean, obviously, there's things that we can do to sort of limit our exposure or to help with this. But is there? is there anything that is happening right now in the laws or that institutions are doing to sort of help? Because you think about it, and, you know, you say that it's way worse in kids, but you look at the way that schools are going, and they're all getting tablets in their schools. The kids are all going there with cell phones, Wi-Fi all throughout. Is there any change happening?
Canaries in the coal mine kind of thing. It depends on what part of the world you're in.
And if you think about where we put our devices, most is the groin, the pocket, the heart there, if you got a suit jacket on, or you're going to be on the phone up to here. So the three worst spots. Now, is
naturally do that, right? So they've already labeled it.
Is it affecting children much more than it would be an adult then? Is that what you were suggesting earlier?
Just like arsenic would be. The only reason they didn't just only talk about it in terms of fact, the fact that it goes all the way through is because there was not enough data. And recently, with the study work from the Rosani Institute and because it's all soft tissue, we expect the bones are not. World Health Organization is going to declare they're not resistive. So we have those kinds of activity. A child is 3 times more tends to be susceptible than an adult male. There are some countries that don't allow Wi-Fi. It's like we have these exposures. They don't to kids playing little games, cell phones or any tablets with their connection because of the potential dangers, and they're being exposed. They seem to be far more advanced, and they're absorbing 3 times of understanding of the population than the U.S. Is that good? In the U.S., as you can imagine,
it's crazy.
So
is there? I mean, obviously there's things that we can do to sort of limit our exposure or to help with this, but is there anything that is happening right now in the laws or that institutions are doing to sort of help? Because you think about it, and you know, you say that it's way worse in kids, but you look at the way that schools are going, and they're all getting tablets in their schools. The kids are all going there with cell phones, Wi-Fi all throughout. Is there any change happening?
From Connecticut, I believe it was. Recently questioned the FCC and what part of the world you're in. You just approved 5G. I'll start off by saying that the World Health Organization proven there's no evidence considers RF that it's safe to be carcinogenic. We have some of that stuff going on. So they've already labeled it. In fact, as 5G was approved a toxin in our environment. CTI just like arsenic. The only reason they didn't talk about it in terms of up to 300 pure carcinogenic, which is really because there was not enough data. I can explain. And recently, with the study work from the Rosani Institute and the NTP occurring, we expect that the World Health Organization is going to declare it a cancer. When did it? So we have those kinds of activity. There was a cancer link. Europe was when they started losing far more aggressive. We knew the signs. There are some countries that, but ultimately, it was when we began seeing this stuff in court. They don't. And I can still remember when cell phones or any other because of the potential dangers of cigarettes. They seem to be far more advanced. Warning, it's in terms of understanding of the population than the U.S. is. We have just in the U.S., as you can imagine, there's a conflict of cases, a political in which the cell phone industry is losing. And Italy recently, where one man that conflict will continue. Was my guess is cell phone emissions, and even though we have standards that are coming out from the FCC, that's what's going to be. We have these counter arguments that are going on. The more we make noise, the more the state, the senator from from Connecticut, I believe it was, recently questioned the FCC.
When I was reading the book Radiation Nation, which is an awesome book, by the way, if you want to learn about EMF, this gives absolutely everything you need to know. But I was interested to see that Lakehead University here in Canada has banned Wi-Fi on campus.
Yeah.
That's in fact, I couldn't believe I just couldn't even imagine going to school without Wi-Fi. But hey, good move, right? I mean, it's obviously the way that we need to go. It's kind of going, back to the way that it used to be, but it makes sense. I mean, if that's what you got to do, then that's really what we have to do.
Yeah, believe it or not, in Canada, they seem to be a bit more aggressive in trying to understand this. There was a Dr. Trower is his name. He's out of back to smoking. When did it become common knowledge that there was a cancer war device? It was when they started that RF signal. We knew the science had it at that time, and so but ultimately it was when we began seeing this stuff in power. And I can still remember when it was using certain technologies to do that. Well, he was packaging actually in Canada quite often, talking about the guns and warning. It's bad. You are radiating your children. We have just begun. I developed in the UK defend ourselves from our enemies. Cell phone and you have it in the classroom. Italy and so one man. Canada seems to be a little bit more rebellious to be cell phone than the U.S. right now, which I'm really happy to see, because I believe, quite honestly, we just don't know prompting what the long-term impacts of a cell phone. The more we make noise to a child's head, the more likely it's true all the way through. We're going to get evidence. Just don't know.
So let's look at some of the devices. When I was sort of, give some practical information to the listeners.
Awesome book, by the way.
What kind of devices? I mean, obviously there's some EMF coming from
everything you need to know, but I was interested to see
we can't just go back
Lakehead
to
University
no
here in
devices.
Canada.
We're not going to go back to
banned Wi-Fi on
1800s.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's,
I couldn't believe.
Are there ones that we should be more concerned about?
Wi-Fi.
But hey, good move, right? I mean, it's obviously the way that we need to go. It's kind of going
one really
back to the way that it used to be, but it makes sense. I mean,
the fact is
then that's really what we have to
the
do.
The power level, believe it or not, in Canada, they seem to be a bit more aggressive in trying to understand this. Is the worst that it can be. Dr. Trower, if you take it one, the UK, he 1 foot away, 80% of the cell danger is gone. That are 98 signal devices at 4 foot. And so when, as a general rule, transmit this signal, if you're not using it, it can disarm you. Move it away using certain technologies by at least 4 feet or more. Actually, in Canada, quite often. And of course, about the guns in the room. If you have you are radiating your like a cell phone with technology that has Wi-Fi in the UK and to cell connection. And you don't defend ourselves from our enemies. And you don't use and you have it in the classroom. Turn them on. And so you don't need them. Canada seems to be reducing more the magnitude of that emissions within the room than the U.S. right simply now, by which I'm really happy to see, because quite honestly, we just don't know. The other major long-term impacts of a cell phone message going to a child's head, time, duration. If you use it 5 minutes a day,
let's look at some of the devices and sort of, give some practical information to the listeners. What kind of devices? I mean, obviously there's some EMF coming from every device, but we can't just go back to no devices. We're not going to go back to the 1800s.
And they're very, very simple things.
So are there ones that we should be more concerned about?
Moving it away?
Or can you sort of discuss that?
Yeah, Wi-Fi. If you have a Wi-Fi, really, particularly if it's near your bedroom, and we'll talk about this. The fact is, but if it's aWi-Fi, the power level, I have a timer, 1.6 turns it off at 10 o'clock at night when I go touching the head, and at 7 o'clock is the worst it can be. I little time. If you take it one at night, so I'm not 1 foot away, populating my environment, 80% of the cell danger is gone. I had one 98% I was talking to at 4 foot. So as a general, they were being very, very pleasant. If you're not using it, what should I do in my bedroom away from you? Don't ever buy at least 4 foot these devices near you, because it screws around. And of course, toning and all sorts of stuff. And if you have your devices, very polite, and she said, "Oh, that's good to know." And it had Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and cell phone. About 2 months later, she calls me up and she wants you don't use another podcast, and you don't use. I didn't believe what you were saying. Turn them off. It was actually interfering. So you're reducing my sleep, the magnitude of because I had these simply by managing. So they really do affect you. And there's a lot of the other major scientific evidence message is this time duration. If you use it 5 minutes a day.
Now, the other things that are going on in the house. I mean, I think in the book. What is it? The things that measure the amount of electricity that the hydro that you're using. You've got all these other devices. Is there anything we do about those, or do we just kind of have to
your real friends
live with all those kind of around?
Things to do. And when you're not using wonderful question, particularly as it relates to moving away, smart meters is a great idea. Panicking now, Wi-Fi about a smart meter. If you have a Wi-Fi is particularly the strength of your bedroom, and we'll talk about this. 3/4 of the strength of Wi-Fi transmission. I have a time periodic. It turns it off at 10 o'clock at night when I go to bed. Remember, if it's on your garage wall, I live there's a 20 I don't have it on at night. Space between you and the bedroom. Populating my environment with potential. There's nothing to worry about. The distance is protected. I had one person I was talking to keeping devices. They were being very, very pleasant to me. They said, like that away. What should I do in my bed is probably the best thing ever have. Having a meter, because it screws around with your mouth, and walking around the room with any form of meter. She was very polite, and she said, "Oh, that's good. Tell you, boy, you're in trouble." About 2 months later, she calls me up and she wants to do another podcast. You know, I didn't believe what you were saying. When you have, it was actually interfering with my husband's and my TV that uses because I had these devices around Wi-Fi connection. So they really do connect it with an Ethernet. There's a lot of anecdotal when you have your scientific evidence or your computer Wi-Fi connected to an Ethernet plug.
Interesting. Now, when the other things that are going on in the house, I mean, I think in the book,
I actually have it.
What is it? The things that measure the amount of electricity that the hydro that you're using. You know, you've got all these other devices. Is there anything we do about those, or do we just kind of have to
things like that is really
live with all those kind of around?
And a meter is going to say that's a wonderful trouble, particularly as the only thing you really do is smart meters, turn them off. People are panicking, and so in my opinion, spending money you don't need is if you're diligent about finding the sources in your house. 3/4 of
the more
the
you talk, the more you realize how many things are devices and how many things are connected around the house.
But remember, and they have these refrigerators that tell you they need more food. 20-foot garage through the Wi-Fi space between you don't really necessarily you in the living quarters. For your environment, you know what I mean?
Look in the fridge, see if you need more food.
So,
no, I mean, there's a lot of people that, you know, all day like when you're at work, you're either on your phone or you're on your laptop. So, I mean, moving it or staying away from it isn't really possible, I guess, for a lot of people because that's the way of life now for jobs.
Tell you you're in trouble.
The devices that you created for your sons that you talked about at the beginning. All you got to do is look for the source. Do these help? Does it block all of the EMF? Does it block all the different types of EMF? Can you sort of talk about how that works and if this is something that maybe the future for us if you know we're going to be using all these devices?
Connected with an Ethernet. Remember when you have your laptop, I mentioned that the signal is omnidirectional. It goes in all directions. Connected to an Ethernet plug. By the way, I'm like you. When you're using, I'm not going to put my laptop down. I don't use it. Not use it because it's going to damage away. I'm going to manage it. And there are a couple of ways I can do that by moving it away from me oftentimes. And then of course I have products for my shield. Simple little things like that is really all you need to worry about. And the meter is going to say you got a signal, and the only thing you really do is move in one direction, turn them off, but allow it. And so, in my opinion, you're spending money. Very simple device if you're diligent about finding the sources in your house. There are ways of.
The more you talk, the more you realize how many things are devices and how many things are connected around the house.
Your body. And they have these refrigerators that tell you they need more food through the Wi-Fi. You don't really necessarily need. By the way, it's probably a good time to talk about.
Look in the fridge.
How to remember all these details? I talk about it as bees in the room.
So I mean, there's a lot of people that
one bee won't kill you.
You know, all day when you're at work, you're either on your phone or you're on your laptop. So I mean, moving it or staying away from it isn't really possible, I guess, for a lot of people because that's the way of life now for our jobs.
You're improving your health.
The devices that you created for your sons that you talked about at the beginning, do these help? Does it block all of the EMF? Does it block all the different types of EMF? Can you sort of talk about how that works and if this is something that may be the future for us?
There is a growing,
we're going to be using all these devices.
Serious problem with hypersensitivity. Remember when I mentioned that the signal you can't even go close. It goes in all directions or a cell phone because transmissions are bothering you. By the way, I'm like you. I'm not going to put my cell phone down. You cannot use it easily because it's going to damage you. Heat up really fast. I'm going to manage it, and so there are a couple of ways I can do that by growing concerning oftentimes. And then of course I have products that shield. So it is very important the signal for those, particularly women. 80% of taking 20% of the population and not even allow it to move in one direction. Yeah, allow it to you. By the way, another multiple chemical very simple device in theory, and it's growing. There are ways of and so shielding of that 20%, 80% of women from your body, and we know that it actually gets worse in combination before it gets with management of your. So it's really important to manage your. By the way, what particularly? It's probably a good time to talk about how to remember all these details. I talk about it as bees in the room. That's one of the things I really push. one beam not just because you're going to be safe and you're not going to know. So you can't the idea is to find out where all the beams are in the room and just turn them off. It can be redirect them, put them under wire, and there are when you're minimizing the number of beams in that room, that can get really you're improving your health.
So the big things, the important things to remember is to get some distance from your devices, to manage them. So turn a bunch of them off if you can, or turn them off whenever you have the ability to. And if you can't, then you can sort of block them. And that's the company that Dan has started is called DefenderShield. I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can check out those products. Is there a lot of companies that are doing these? Can you get them anywhere? They all make the same.
What I actually started this stuff when no one seemed to get disrupted easily. There are a couple of companies really fast when are in this business, and so hypersensitivity is a growing concern in our environment as a result. And so there are choices that very a consumer can make. Those, particularly we happen to have 80%, 20% of the population is laundry list of products right now currently for all the 20% that are near. By the way, for multiple chemical sensitivities, we're even coming out with a blanket for pregnant women, and it's growing. Believe it or not, if you are exposed as of that 20%, 80% of women part of the pregnancy, and we know that it actually gets worse. You're 3 times more likely to have a miscarriage. So it's really, really not. This stuff can get serious, particularly for all of us, including pregnant women. So we have a blanket coming out very shortly. That's one of the things that we really push. A variety of different because you're going to be safe and you're not going to know it. You can't smell it, you can't see it. Tablet, you can't feel it. We have a bunch of those kinds of choices, but it can be dangerous. And also, one thing we haven't talked about: there are indicators that actually is important to know can get really because it's becoming more and more of a problem.
So the big things, the important things to remember is to get some distance from your devices, to manage them. So turn a bunch of them off if you can, or turn them off whenever you have the ability to. And if you can't, then you can sort of block them. And that's the company that Dan has started. It's called DefenderShield. I'll leave a link in the show notes so you can check out those products. Is there a lot of companies that are doing these? Can you get them anywhere? They all make the same.
What I actually started this stuff when actually part of our environment seemed to care. The blue light. There are a couple of companies very, very close to and being called ionized radiation, and so there are when choices you go to get an X-ray, a consumer can make. At the dentist, we happen to have, and they put something in your mouth. They throw the laundry heavy thing on top of you. They rush into the other room devices that are near the body. A button being pushed, and they look out and see coming out with a blanket. If you are, they come back. Believe it or not, they were ionized radiation. As a pregnant woman, exposure to ionized radiation can disrupt the cell from RF and mutate the cell. You're 3 times more likely to have a miscarriage from the strength of the. Believe it or not, this stuff can get serious for all of us, including when you have. So we have a blanket. It's getting close to be called ionized radiation. A variety of different non-ionized is all the stuff we've been talking about all day. Non-tablet cases. We have a bunch of those. Borderline is blue light. And so also, one thing we haven't talked about: look at a screen, which is actually modern stuff just happening is because it's becoming more and more of a problem. You stare at a screen. We also have glasses that you stare at into a cell phone. Blue you light. Stare at a TV. There is a blue light component. Blue light is hitting the retina. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Here are a couple of things. Visible light. Through research, we know that that's on the electromagnetic radiation spectrum, premature macular degeneration. And so your eye can deteriorate as a result of that blue light component. And these are scientific research that everyone will. It's part of our environment. Let's say the blue light you have dry eye. It's very, very close going to the doctor, and he's saying, take these being called ionized drops of stuff, and when you go to get an X-ray, will be okay. And the dry eye could actually be a result of the blue light. Put something in your mouth. So they throw this really heavy thing on top of you. There is more and more rush into the other room that us looking at screens button for such extended period. They look out and see if you're still there. And if you are, they come back. Could be very dangerous. Why are they worried? It's ionized radiation. And so we have a product line. Exposure to ionized radiation can disrupt the blue component. and mutate the cell almost instantly.
I knew a lot about
from the strength of the
blue light
signal
in the
itself.
sense that
So,
it sort of tricks your brain into thinking that the
when
sun
you
is still
have
up,
blue
right?
light,
So it sort of
it's getting
your
close
melatonin
to be
production. We've
called
talked about that on the show
ionized
before,
radiation.
and talked about wearing blue light
Non-ionized
glasses,
is
at
all the
night
stuff
to help
we've
you
been talking
sleep.
about all day.
I didn't realize it was also a
Non-ionized.
form
But
of
the borderline is
radiation.
blue light.
That's
Yeah, it is. That's literally what it is. Look at it. And by the way, what you were referring to at night, it's the circadian rhythm. You stare at a screen, screwing around with. You stare at and cell phone. There is a subtending bunch of stuff that's dead as a result of you not component getting that rhythm. It's hitting the retina for your life. Is that a good thing?
So it seems that we've really
research
screwed up our technology in these devices. I don't know if you know, but is there any technology that's out there that's on the rise that is a phone or some sort of device that doesn't emit as much radiation or any radiation? Like, is there any sort of technology that's out there yet? Do we have any hope?
You're going to the doctor and you're saying there are. They're looking at optical connections, drops of which is stuff, and line of sight, your eye will be okay. Well, the dry eye could actually be a result of the blue light patterns to connect from one thing to another. There is more and more that essentially eliminates that us looking at screens for such extended period of time, those kinds of things, because of the blue light component, could be very dangerous. But in contrast, and so we have a product those things strictly that occurring, filtering out the blue. I mentioned 5G a moment ago.
I mean, I knew a lot about
is up to 300 gigahertz,
blue light in the sense that it sort of tricks your brain into thinking that the sun is still up, right? So it sort of delays your melatonin production. We've talked about that on the show before.
It's a device used to
and talked about wearing blue light blocking glasses, at night to help you
hits your
sleep.
skin.
I didn't realize it was also a form of
with the
radiation. That's
it is. That's literally what it is. Really hot. And by the way, what you were referring to at night, well, that's at 90 gigahertz circadian rhythm. And so we have that is 5G coming about, and which is there is a subtending bunch of stuff 300 gigahertz as a result of you not. We know that rhythm correct for your potentially can be.
So it seems that we
continuing trend
really screwed up our technology in these devices. I don't know if you know, but is there any technology that's out there that's on the rise that is a phone or some sort of device that doesn't emit as much radiation or any radiation? Like, is there any sort of technology that's out there yet? Do we have
they come a little bit sooner than
there are. I mean, they're looking at optical connections. Which is point line of sight connections. One thing I didn't mention where it's using when you have exposures like that from one thing to another. There's not just essentially eliminates the emissions. So there are kinds of those. But your immune system actually reacts to it as well. We know from research from Dr. Ali Johansson of those things that not only is it damaging potentially to the cell, 5G, but your whole immune system is suppressed. And 5G is so 300 gigahertz, 90 gigahertz reduced system for it's these kinds of things where it's called you have leaky gut, for example, and it's a device used to crowd control your emission. And what it does is it hits your skin response to the your skin acts as an antenna with the and so when those kinds of things are all and it absorbs it, and all of a sudden you get really actually are more susceptible and you run to that. So you really want that's at 90 gigahertz. Make sure that there's not just and so we have 5G coming, but also the internal, which is so there's not the just the 300 gigahertz. And we know that body that response from the gut potentially can be. By the way, the continuing trend of bugs in your excess health than there is as a result of those exposures. So to give you an idea of how important that is, and I think you may know those. But on the other hand, there are technologies it's really beginning to come out that may help. The other thing you also need, and this is actually up your alley a little bit too, is
hopefully
our foods.
They come a little bit
100 years ago.
Than we hope.
I mean it's actually getting more serious stuff. Lettuce,
sure.
Not lettuce, and one thing I didn't mention, eat it.
Spinach.
When you have exposures like that, 80 milligrams. There's not just if you look today, it has the emissions to the cell milligrams, but your immune system actually the minerals within our body. We know from research from Dr. Ali Johansson is that, and as a result, not only is it damaging deficiencies in the cell, but your whole immune system is suppressed. So you really want to start looking at ways of reduce looking at bringing health, these kinds of things where you have, and there are a lot of products available. You have leaky gut, for example, and so you maintain your ability to suppress and deal with your response to the environment, toxic environment. And so
that's a good point too. I mean, you're not going to be able to protect or prevent all the EMF that's coming out, that's coming onto you. But if you can eat healthy and just be a healthy individual, you're going to be able to fight those effects a little bit better. So just another reason to really take care of yourself and take care of your health.
Body response
is there anything before I have a couple last questions for you, but is there anything that we missed that you need to make sure that people hear about EMF?
To give you an idea of how important that is. And I think you may know those kinds of those facts. We were talking about what time continuum. The other thing you also need, and this we talked about 5G a little bit. Our food, we never talked about, 100 years ago, it may help to understand what was going on. Lettuce. When the standard was developed over 30 years ago, it was based on an analog signal.
Spinach.
An analog signal has 180 milligrams constant iron in it. Here's an analogy. Today, if I take a steel bar and I put it into a piece of concrete, and I put 10,000 pounds onto that steel bar, years or so, and it's a constant result of that, we have deficiencies in our. When I take a steel bar and I put it on a piece of concrete, and I lift ways of 10,000 pounds up, and I drop it down, lift it up within the body. And there are a lot of products available to sort of. Why is that important? Well, so you maintain your ability to suppress and 2 to 4G environmental is a digital load.
That's a good point too. I mean, you're not going to be able to protect or prevent all the EMF that's coming out, that's coming onto you. But if you can eat healthy and just be a healthy individual, you're going to be able to fight those effects a little bit better. So just another reason to really take care of yourself and take care of your health. Is there anything, before I have a couple last questions for you, but is there anything that we missed that you need to make sure that people hear about EMF?
Sets of data within the. We were talking about the time continuum. It's called MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. And so now we talked about 5G cameras that are hitting. But we never talked about 1 through 4G. As a result of that, it may help to understand what was going on to the cell. When the standard was developed, that the evolution from analog to digital, it was based on an analog in how the cell deals with it. An analog signal is a constant waveform. So when you use caution, you really. Here's an analogy. If I take a steel bar when you use 5G, and I put it into a piece of concrete environment next year, and I put 10,000 pounds onto that.
Is it next year? It's coming 2019.
Yeah, and it's a constant load. Trialing it won't break.
So when it seems like they're just going to, the companies, the corporations are just going to keep coming out with these better technologies. And I mean, it's kind of what the consumer wants, because at the moment they don't know the health impacts to it. For those of us who have listened to this podcast and understand the consequences or the risks, is there anything that we can do? Is there anything that we can do to sort of help, or where are we at with this? Like, what can we do to kind of band together and change the algorithms and communicating back and forth in the technologies that I tend not to like to go into the political. It's more dangerous to the cell. It's clear that that needs to be taken. When I'll give you an example. Load. I work with a neurologist. Here comes 5G. Washington State. 5G is not only up to 300 gigahertz, but it also has splitting headache. What's going on in my environment? And sets of data within just within the cottage. It's called MIMO, multiple in, multiple out. And so now we go look at the 2 jackhammers that are hitting. Went and looked at it, and it was a 5G router. And as a result of that, there could potentially be more danger to the cell. He turned it off. Given we know that the evolution from analog to digital, so he's a belief change in how the cell deals with it. There could be some potential 5G, certainly they're transient danger. So when you use caution. He had pay a lot of attention cell tower that was being installed 5G in his area, which is in the environment the town wanted to approve or deny it. Is it next year? It's coming 2019.
So he did. Yes, he went down. They're actually trialing it already, and so
I mean, it seems like, they're just going to, the companies, the corporations are just going to keep coming out with these better technologies. And I mean, it's sort of kind of what the consumer wants, because at the moment they don't know the health impacts to it. For those of us who have listened to this podcast and understand, the consequences or the risks, is there anything that we can do? Is there, is there anything that we can do to sort of help, or what's, where are we at with this?
So it's a matter of making sure
band together and make a difference here.
Like you don't want multiple. I tend not to like to go into the political space because you have chemicals that have a cap in a bedroom that needs to be taken. You want to give you an example. Same thing. I work with a manager environment. Those are the best things you can do in time. And we'll see. He called me up on Saturday morning. He said, I got this.
So if someone wants to continue to learn about the advances of EMF and kind of where things are going, do you guys have any resources? I mean, obviously Radiation Nation, if you want to, really dive into it, pick up that book. Really interesting read. But do you guys have like somewhere that you continue to put out information, or is there anything that we can?
So let's talk about the book. It off 2 hours later. What prompted me to write the book? And my son. So he's a believer that we were frustrated. There could be some potential danger. We were frustrated that research. So it's really he had solid cell tower that was the layperson didn't know anything about in his area, and for that matter, didn't even know what it was or deny it. So we set out, and so what he did years ago, he went down to the town to help moms, grandmas, shared his experience. So there's people who don't necessarily understand this part of your local rather technical stuff. And try to give it lobby to them in the right way that they know that that's beginning to be other radiation nation at higher levels. Irony of all ironies, I had researchers from all those, and I mentioned Ollie Johansson. 10 years from now, they'll still be fighting. He actually wrote us and said, "My God, really." So it's a matter of he's been doing electromagnetic radiation study work for 30 years. Like you don't want. What we knew was the research wasn't talking to the physicians community because you have physicians chemicals that doesn't have a cap in the bedroom. Layperson about you want a subjects. So that's why we wrote manager environment to keep current. We have on our website in time. We'll see what articles we write all the time.
Yeah. So if someone wants to continue to learn about the advances of EMF and kind of where things are going, do you guys have any resources? I mean, obviously Radiation Nation, if you want to, really dive into it, pick up that book. Really interesting read. But do you guys have like somewhere that you continue to put out information, or is there anything that we can? To go more deep. So we have let's talk about the book on our website. What prompted me to write the book? Extensive library, and my son research library. We were frustrated. Conjecture. We were frustrated that research study work that's been bona and solid, properly operated. Yeah, and we keep a whole layperson didn't know anything about there. So, if you want to investigate for that matter, didn't even know ADHD in the link to. So we set out a few years ago. You can find it to help. So we have that moms, of data, grandmas, can be helpful for everyone at the, people who don't necessarily understand this. Awesome. Well, Dan, I don't have any other questions, but I just want to first say thank you for joining us here and explaining all this. That's why we wrote interesting information, and also say thank you for all the work that you guys are doing.
Researchers
this is definitely an important issue, and it's probably going to be one of the bigger issues of our time, I think, similar to the way that smoking that was. So we need people like you guys who are sort of getting after it and tackling it head on. So thank you for that, and thank you for sharing all this. So I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add, but really appreciate you coming on here
to keep current. I really appreciate you asking me to your show because it helps us bring some messaging to what's going on in the those who need to listen to it, as well as with Facebook. It turns out Facebook, we post almost every day of what's going on in the environment and more effective. Who's arguing with who? Women, what new data mothers, know, grandmothers. So we constantly. It's really important that we try to path to go more deep, at least to have a sense and argue within our website intelligently. A very extensive library and hopefully research through the work you're doing, inviting me, conjecture and hearsay. Other things we're doing will be research study work. So much again that's been bona fide and properly operated.
All right, thank you, Dan.
And we keep a whole literature base there. So if you want to investigate a little bit about ADHD and the link to EMF, you can find it. So we have that library of data that can be helpful for everyone at DefenderShield.com.
Awesome. Well, Dan, I don't have any other questions, but I just want to first say thank you for joining us here and explaining all this this interesting information, and also say thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. You know, this is definitely an important issue, and it's probably going to be one of the bigger, you know, issues of our time, I think, similar to the way that smoking and that was. So, you know, we need people like you guys who are sort of getting after it and tackling it head on. So, you know, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing all this. So, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add, but you know, really appreciate you coming on here.
Well, I really appreciate you asking me to your show, because it helps us bring some messaging to those who need to listen to it. This data, it turns out women are more affected than men. Women, mothers, grandmothers. It's really important that we find a path to get people at least to have a sense and argue intelligently one side or the other. And hopefully through the work you're doing, inviting me, and other things we're doing will be effective. Thank you so much again for inviting me. I really do appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Well, you take care.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to check out our new ebook, So You Want to Eat Healthy. You can find it at the link healthsimpleinfo.com/eat-healthy or in the show notes below. If you enjoyed this episode or have any comments or questions, feel free to leave us a review or hit us up on Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great day.